I love.
If you guys can hear us, let us know, and we'll get started. I can see that they're up at least, but let's make sure you can hear us before we start talking too much. Remember to unmute that screen. That's the one that gets me every time. Okay, make sure everything's unmuted before we start. Screw it up. All right, everybody that's on, thank you for being on. We'll go ahead and get started. This will be episode 24 for the Middle American Outdoors Fireside Chats. And tonight we're going to get into something that we've been talking about amongst ourselves a little bit, just trying to figure out the right timing. We're going to be talking about basically postseason, if you want to call it depression. I'm sure for some it's much more depressing than others, depending on how your season went. But postseason, what it's like after deer season and kind of the stuff we do, etc. But let me go ahead and bring in Ben. And as always, guys that are on live, feel free to ask questions, give comments, give your opinion. I'll do my best to keep up with it and get your input in here to honor the fact that you're joining us live, and we thank you for it. But what's going on, Ben?
Oh, I'm hurting, buddy. I've got a spot here close to the house that we've been kind of putting off developing it into what it should be, and it was getting way out of control, and the weather was nice yesterday, so I put a post on our Facebook page, and man, I just went at it. I had to get out there and do something, and the shed hunting was kind of, I don't know. I don't get into it as much as Jake does, but I was, I cut down a couple hundred trees, anywhere from thumb size up to 16 inches, and I got a few left, but that was about all I was good for yesterday. So I'm paying for it today.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. What are you going to be doing in that area?
Oh, part of it's gonna go to some natural grasses for the area. Um, Not so much for deer, but just wildlife in general. Um, I think it was the Hunting Public did on their podcast a few weeks ago. They talked about um, just improving wildlife habitat, even like in your front yard. There's so much you can do that makes a huge difference. Um, but I foresee the deer, turkeys, quail, all of it using this little area. It's a little bit secluded from the main drive in the house, so like I said, part of it's going to be grass, and then I'm going to put in some forage for the deer because it is along the creek bottom, and they do travel through there, so it will get used by them. And it's not so much for the hunting aspect; it's just kind of improve the property and make it a little better for the wildlife. It sure beats mowing it and looking at a bunch of crappy trees.
Yeah.
And then eventually we're going to put in some more desirable trees. We're going to put in some walnut, some oak, and some fruit trees. And selfishly, the fruit trees will be a little bit for us, but it's the perfect spot for it. So
Very nice.
but that's all I've been up to this week, pretty much.
Yeah.
And we had a hog hunt we were supposed to go to this last weekend through for VCO. We was going to take 3 guys down there to Texas to Piney Woods Rooters. Huge supporter of VCO, but they were dealing with the aftermath of all the freezing they had down there. They had some water lines break and flooded all their cabins, and so we had to reschedule for the first weekend in April. So we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah. And you've got, when is the Gator Guard trip?
That is the week after,
Crap.
and then the weekend after that, the guy that won the raffle for the hog hunt, his hunt's the third weekend in April, and I'm going to be going down there to film that for him. So
Yikes.
yeah, like half the month of April, I'm gonna be in Texas.
That's crazy. Rough. With the land restoration, Ben turned me on to it's a series called Back 40 put on by Meat Eater, and it's actually on YouTube. If you guys want to look into some land improvement ideas, it's a sweet series. The guy basically was charged with turning a 64-acre farm. Had like 5 or 6 different fields on that 64 acres up in Michigan. And he's kind of just charged with, over the course of 2 years, taking that property and turning it into like the ultimate ecosystem. Not just purely for whitetail habitat hunting environment, but to the extent of like they brought in somebody to count bird species to evaluate the health of their ecosystem, and brought in bees and just all kinds of stuff that they did over the 2 years. And obviously that's pretty hard for most of us to take on, because this guy was doing it full-time job basically during spring and fall, I would say. But it's really cool. I want to say it's like maybe 20 episodes max between the 2 seasons. And then they turned it over to a government, or like a state game and parks type organization, and to get new people into hunting to use that property. So he put 2 years into it and then just gave them the keys and walked away, which is got to be tough. But it's cool. It really opened my eyes to a lot. Going to be doing a lot more for property management this spring. New piece of river ground that we're just going to try to completely flip into a good ecosystem, and obviously primarily whitetail hunting habitat for bow hunting. But it's cool to see a lot of the stuff they do, and I won't be doing it in 2 years. It'll be more like a 10-year project for us or longer, but getting excited to get into that this upcoming weekend. I think I'm going to put boots on the ground and try to walk around. I think it's close to 200 acres in that north section. It's going to be a lot of boots on the ground.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can do just making small changes, though.
Yeah.
I've been here for going on just a little over 4 years now, and just the little changes we made a huge difference. And the nice thing about, if you want to focus on deer hunting, it's fantastic. Every other animal or everything you do for deer is going to benefit every other animal out there.
For sure. And they do a great job of showing that on the Back 40, and just taking it even to the next level of thinking about the other species. And they do a lot of controlled burns, and yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, most of us can't afford to bring in all those specialists to tell them what kind of weeds are what and what to do, but you can get some good information from that, what they did. And they even, scratched kind of what they did in year 1 and kind of redid a bunch of stuff in year 2. And in year 2, that place looks phenomenal.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome series. I've watched it 2 or 3 times.
Let's see. We'll just jump into the topic, guys. We're going to be, like I said, we're going to be talking about what we're going to call quote-unquote postseason depression, specifically deer hunting, and impact some of us differently, obviously, even from year to year based on how your previous year went. And we're going to get into what we do outside of deer hunting, and depending on what your hobbies are outside of deer hunting, it affects it as well. But for somebody like me that's, like we've said a million times, like 98% deer hunting, it's a tough time of year. But we'll get into some of the other stuff that Ben does, and even Jake, even though he's not on, we'll kind of get into that. But Ben, as far as when we use the term postseason depression, what is that? What are your first thoughts on it? Like, what does it make you think of? How would you define this time of the year?
For me, it's only tough like that January to about right now. It's still cold out. You've been hunting hard all season. You don't really feel like doing a whole lot. You're just kind of burned out, especially if you're taking trips to hunt. Like you went out west. I went on that bear hunt. All that stuff really adds up, and it really kicks the family dynamic in the butt. So, I try to use that time to kind of focus on family a little bit more, kind of get some of the honeydews done around the house. But, I had a pretty decent season this year. I know Jake had a pretty rough season. So, when you're sitting back reflecting on how your season went, and, it's a little easier to stomach all that if you've had a successful season. And it's gotten easier for me over the years when it's quote unquote unsuccessful, um, just because I kind of look at the what my successes were a little differently than I did just a few years ago. um, but about this time of year everything starts ramping back up for me, so um, really looking forward to what's coming. Starting to get excited.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the stuff that you do additionally. Amber just said she took her game cams down yesterday and today. That's kind of the postseason depression and inducing for me, although I am looking forward to shed hunting and turkey season. That's right on. So this last weekend, Megan and I got out with the two older kids. They're 4 and 2. And the 2 dogs as well. The youngest had to go to grandma and grandpa's, but we got out to one of the Big Red Outdoors properties that I unfortunately never got a chance to hunt, but I did a lot of reconnaissance on during the summer. Deposited a $1,200 GoPro setup out there over the summer. Just kicks me in the... Never found it. Didn't find it then. Can't find it now. It's rough. But anyway, we got out there and pulling cameras. We walked about 3 miles with the kids on our backs and shed hunting, like I always say. But between the kids, the dogs running around, and like I've mentioned before, those dogs are always testing their 40-yard perimeter. And when they get out there, they'll look, and if you're not looking, they're gone. And so trying to keep your eyes on them constantly. You just really can't look for sheds. You're just going kind of point to point, following a lot of game trails in case we got lucky. But pulling cameras down. And anyway, what she was referencing, yeah, like when you're pulling cameras down, to me, that's kind of the admission that it's over. And you're not even going to get any really useful intel on your cameras at this point, because they were probably set up for fall feeding patterns and whatnot, so you're not even seeing anything on the cameras, etc. But so we did that this last weekend, and for me, like the postseason depression, I would just say that like you're anticipating deer season all year long. For me, working hard on your bow, everything with the archery, all the gear, etc., etc. And then once it comes, I mean, I go pretty hard, darn near every weekend from September through December. It feels like long hours, usually in way before sunrise, and just long hours. And the trips don't, at this point in my life, not doing any like out of state draws or big trips, but when I draw like the mule deer conservation tag to go out west, those trips are pretty taxing. And after this last year, man, like let's see, that was December 12th or somewhere in there where I killed the muley. Well, even if you go back to like November 9th is when I killed the whitetail. I kind of crashed out for a little while. Like I knew I couldn't kill another whitetail buck. And the drive, that drive that keeps you going, even though you're completely exhausted, I kind of crashed out for a while, and I think I took some time off to regroup at home. And we'll get more into that family side of it, but time off to regroup at home and start planning hard for the muley trip, so I can try to get it done in one shot. And got out there for that, hunted hard, long weekend, and then home, get through the work week, and then that next weekend just crash out again. Like try to be useful at home, but just not real ambitious to get a lot done or anything. And finally regrouped and got back out for late season rifle to try to get some does. And yeah, at that point, like I don't know, I start to feel like I'm just doing it because I feel like I have to, and it becomes kind of burdensome because you're tired, and the drive is gone because I was successful in getting the $2, and I wish I would have got more does. I should have taken more does, obviously. That'll be a big point of emphasis for me, especially with land management. But need to regroup now and get back to work, and yeah, that's kind of what it is for me. It's that, gosh, in Nebraska, it's 4 entire months of bow season, and I primarily bow hunt, so I'm going hard with the bow, constantly thinking you can get it done in the early season and constantly getting disappointed. And like every year I'm like, I'm going to save myself for prime time, so I'm not so dead in the tree when it's prime time and haven't bankrupted my time away from home before it's even prime time. But every year I'm out there first weekend of September.
Well, you don't realize it when you're in the middle of it, though.
Yeah. And it's like, once I always think like I'll just go once at the beginning and like, then I'll give myself a break. But it's like once you scratch the itch, you just can't stop. And like,
it's the addiction, man.
I always have in my head like this dream scenario of how it's going to work today and why it's going to work, so I convince myself to go again. And if anybody listened to when Matthew Reeves was on a couple weeks ago talking about his great season in Alabama, from Southern Pursuit, he had a really good point at the end of that about he thought one of the biggest reasons he was so successful is because he was more selective on the days that he hunted, just because he had a good property. If there wasn't something else to set that day apart, such as like, it depends on what you believe in or what you have experience with, like if it's moon phase, if it's barometric pressure changes, if it's temperature changes, if it's post rain, whatever your thing is that you think is the key. If none of those things are in your favor, he would just stay out, and save himself, or at least not go pressure that spot. He'd go hit like public ground that he has always wanted to hit but hasn't been out there, and you just go do boots on the ground, kind of like active scouting with the bow in your hand. And if you get lucky, you get lucky, but at least you're not blowing up your property, and you're still trying to be respectful of the other public hunters, that you're not blowing up their opportunities. But that's something that, yeah, I talk about every year that I should, and I just don't. And then you start getting in November, and I'm just like, when I killed that whitetail, I tried to count, and I was like, at least 20 to 30 sits in already. My sits are usually pretty long because I'm usually traveling a good distance and getting in there super early. No set stands, so a lot to set up, especially filming gear, etc. And I never leave early, so always getting out way after dark, and yeah, long sits.
Well, we had a lot of conversations on every one of your hunts. You were, trying to decide where to go.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't feel like, maybe one or two were like, it's kind of iffy, but almost every one of them, everything just seemed to be in your favor.
Yeah, there's always
just,
we would pick out, like, or I'd show Ben. That was the good part about Big Red Outdoors. There's just so many properties spread throughout eastern Nebraska, and from river ground to high ground to just different options. And, I think I focused on like maybe three different properties this year from Big Red Outdoors, and ran cameras and paid close attention to maps and stuff. And that way, if, things were good, but wind direction sucked for this property, then this one's probably going to work. Would kind of lay out my thoughts and go over it with Ben, and then commit to one, whatever it was going to be, watch the weather coming up. And that's taxing too. Like, as fun as it is, as much as I love it, like the mental fatigue of doing all that stuff is really taxing. Yeah, it's a lot of effort that goes into every single hunt, especially on the filming game and the gear prep and everything else with every single hunt. And you just kill yourself.
Yeah, you throw the camera gear in, and it just really adds another dimension to it. There was a few hunts where, there was one I did where I didn't have an SD card or something, and so I didn't even take a camera, and it was just so much more relaxing. And, honestly, I did enjoy it more, but I've kind of committed to the filming part of it, and I still have a lot to learn. I'm really looking forward to it this year. I think I learned a lot this year, and so that's added a level of excitement for me personally, that I'm looking forward to for this next year. But definitely it adds a whole new dimension to the stress level.
Yeah. And after 3 years of it, spoiler alert for you guys, we're talking about not giving up filming hunts. We're just going to go at a different approach. Me specifically, Jake and Ben are kind of new into the filming, so they're going to still be doing a little bit more. We're going to produce them a little bit differently. We don't want to get away from the educational content, but I do want to get away from the long productions and the time that was going into those, because maybe we'd even talk about that and how that's taxing. For me, you guys that followed along know that we were putting out 1 to 2 hunting films a week through hunting season on top of hunting, and it was just rough. And we don't want to go to producing just kill content. We still want to show hunts. We're just going to try to do it in a different way, and still offer the education. So watch for some announcements on that going through the summer. We're working with Deer Supply Company and Jason Kephart over there with some really cool ideas that I'm excited about. I would say that when we had Matthew on, that's kind of a teaser of what we're looking at as far as producing short films and then having long podcast breakdowns for people that are interested. That kind of sums up what we're looking at doing, instead of the long talking scenes during the every video. But we don't want to give up on doing that stuff, because that's what we're here for, is that educational part. We just want to find a different avenue that's not so taxing and maybe is more beneficial to everybody involved. So moving on from why deer season's so taxing. The last thing you want to do is complain at home about how you're tired. I've learned that, man. Just suck it up. So the next thing would be, we kind of covered how we feel this time of year. It hits me, like I said, when we take the cameras down, but then this year I have a little bit different because I have property that we're going to start working on, and physical doing something toward deer season is going to be really cool that I haven't got to do in the past. So that's going to be a game changer for me this time of year. But usually this time of year, it's just really hard for me because honestly, I don't fish, I don't turkey hunt, I don't do anything but deer hunt. Proactively on my own. If somebody invites me to do something, I might go try it out or tag along or whatever, but I just don't invest myself into it. I'm kind of a master of a few things instead of a jack of all trades kind of guy. If I'm going to put my toes in the water, I want to do it perfectly. So I just don't do all those other things that people look forward to. Like Matthew was talking about, he was jumping into fishing tournaments already in February between trying to get the bonus buck and this, that, and the other, and just crazy amount of stuff. But yeah, he's got the drive, man, I guess. For the guys that are on, what do you guys do this time of year? How do you feel about it? What do you do to pass your time? Alex is on YouTube, and he said that it's time to get on the water. He started, adding mods to his kayak. I'm guessing you're doing some kayak fishing, or is that just trying to get out and kayak the rapids of the Platte River? I'm not sure. I know he's in central Nebraska, so yeah, it's so flat out there. I don't even know if water moves. Yeah. Then the next point then we were going to cover was, do you experience this like any other time of year, Ben, or?
No, not really. Once turkey season hits, I'm pretty much going all the way through the next deer season.
Yeah.
turkey season hits, and then we're hunting mushrooms, which is huge in this area. Um, Turkey season's getting over, then we're starting into the bow fishing and just fishing in general. I absolutely love bow fishing. I wouldn't say more than deer hunting, but it's like they're neck and neck. And I'm gonna get you out this year.
Yeah.
I love bow fishing, and usually there's about a month or 2 months between bow fishing's kind of wearing on me because it's taxing. It's probably more so than deer hunting because a lot of it's done at night. And last year we didn't do it much because of COVID, but we travel a lot, do a lot of tournaments and stuff, and it beats on you physically, mentally, financially.
Yeah.
So, but it's just a ton of fun. And then then we're gearing up for deer season. And I like to take that month there to kind of get prepared for deer season because it is important to me. This year I'm planning on doing some more traveling for deer hunting. I'm planning on getting a Nebraska tag, going back and hunting some of my stomping grounds. So I'll be doing some e-scouting through the summer too. My deer season never really stops. Like I said, last Sunday or yesterday, we was working on food plots. I'm going around talking to landowners, trying to get access to new property. Picked up 3 different properties here the last couple weeks that I'm really excited about. So I'll be doing some scouting. Like my deer season just literally never stops. I'm hunting deer all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex says that it's mostly for fishing, his kayak, and that he ordered some fancy stuff like a fish finder, a new anchor system, stuff like that. And it makes me laugh because if you knew my experiences on kayak in the river here, I would never put something expensive on my kayak. I've had so many close calls in that river. I laugh about it because most of them were not life-threatening. They would have just been gear-threatening or stuff like that. But I certainly have learned my lesson that I probably will never put anything expensive on that kayak to be on that river.
I'm hoping to get Christine Fisher on here someday.
Oh, yeah.
She's I guess professional kayak fisherman. Yeah, she hits tournaments all over the place. And I think she's doing it full time now. But that kayak fishing is getting to be a pretty huge deal.
Yeah.
I don't dare start doing that.
Yeah. Alex, we're hoping to have her on hopefully by the end of the month. That's what we're aiming for.
I hope so.
Maybe like the 29th of March or something if you guys want to tune in for that one.
Yeah, she's really cool. She's super busy, so hopefully we can get her on here.
Yeah. Let's see. Does this happen other times a year for me? I agree. No, not really, because it's just usually longer for me. Like I said, because I'm usually kind of, I would say February, March is when I start pulling cameras and shed hunting. And after that, it's about July when I really start worrying about cameras again. Depending on if I know the property or not. I actually am leaning toward doing way less cameras going forward, except for the fact that there's a new property, so it's kind of like starting over. But the properties that I have hunted a lot before, I think I'm leaning toward not running cameras anymore and just staying out of there instead of trying to figure out who's in there kind of thing. But it's usually just a lot longer for me. But once we start running cameras, I usually have a lot of different properties that I'm running cameras on. I think this last year I had well over 20 cameras out between maybe 5 different properties in eastern Nebraska. And so it was like one weekend each getting them out. And then by the time you got them all out, you're going maybe go 2 properties in a weekend. And so 2-3 weeks from then, after you've got them all out, you're back to the first properties to pull cards and check them. And it's just a cycle of every weekend being on some property. And then next thing you know, it's September and it's go time. But yeah, this is probably the only time for me that it's a real issue. But let's get into just some general talk on well, first of all, I'll recognize some comments. Butch up in Minnesota says they're getting ready for spring turkey, and Sheena up there as well said that this is when she starts looking for shed antlers and walking the hunting areas, doing some postseason scouting, like learning bedding areas, seeing old sign, etc. And it's really easy when there's a lot of snow because you can see good game trails and prints, etc. And then getting into spring turkey up there. And Amber says that she's really diving into archery practice and getting a new bow set up. Definitely what I'm going to talk about here in a minute as far as what we do. I really dive into my bow at this time of year. Otherwise, let's see. I had a thought in my mind. Oh, I was going to ask, you guys up in Minnesota, do you do bow fishing? Ben, do you want to explain what you do with bow fishing a little bit? I think there's probably more people out there that haven't ever thought about it or heard about it than we think that there are.
Sure. It's not new. It's been around for a really long time, but it's really starting to gain traction here in the last probably 4 or 5 years. The nice thing about bow fishing is you can include the whole family, friends, the more the better. You can walk the shores of rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, or you can get a boat. And a lot of boats, most people have boats, they use them at night. They got lights on the front of them, runoff generators, and you just cruise the shallows shooting rough fish, which is Nebraska, Iowa, most of your central states here. You can shoot carp, gar, buffalo. Not sure if you can shoot drum or not. I've never even seen one at night. In Nebraska, after a certain time, you can shoot game fish, but all your length limits still apply. But it's just an absolute blast. Trying to think what else I could say about it.
You could describe the boat, like getting up on a elevated
sure.
platform and stuff.
Yep. So for equipment, you can use pretty much any bow, but they actually have bows that are specialized for it. You don't really want a whole lot of poundage because you're shooting a lot. Sometimes, hundreds to thousands of shots in a night. And on your bow, you have a reel attached to it, and there's a lot of different options on that. And I'll probably do some videos on that or some, a little bit of information on it as the summer progresses. But on your reel, then you have a line attached to an arrow. Your arrow is just a solid shaft or solid fiberglass shaft arrow with a barbed tip on it. And you just go around and try to shoot fish.
I've done it a few times when we lived in western Nebraska, and it was a good time. But that's a whole, like I said, because I know me, and if I started bow fishing, I would be buying the $1,200, what is it, Oneida bows, and just over the top stupidity, and trying to buy like a pontoon with the 10-foot platform and spotlights and whatever else. So I just keep my toes out of that water. Our buddy out in Oregon, you guys, we shared his black buck kills this last deer season. He said that
those are some nice deer.
Yeah, he said he was out shed hunting, public land, and he found some big ones. Was it black bucks, or was it elk out there that you found sheds of? If we don't get to go elk hunting anytime soon, I want to go freaking elk shed hunting, and just find one elk shed. But that would be legit.
I'm on a mission, man. We're gonna go elk hunting.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's gonna happen. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we start with getting out there and shed hunting and learning a piece of property or something. I don't know.
I might not ever come home.
Hey, what do you know? Matthew does bow fishing all summer too.
Imagine that.
If you weren't on earlier, Matthew, we were talking about just the crazy amount of stuff that you're into. Already in open water fishing tournaments and well, I guess not open water, in fishing tournaments and getting ready for turkey and just coming off of a 12-month long deer season I think you had.
Oh, I don't know if we ever asked him. Is he married?
He's getting married here real soon, like in May.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah. He admitted to the same. I mean, so get that wild out of your system, man, as much as you can. Yeah, we're gonna get into that a little bit too. I have that on my list. Let's see. Alex says, "Hey, babe, started bow fishing. Comes home with new boat, new truck, new bow."
Uh-huh.
But
Yep.
I'm getting smart enough to realize that that's what happens, so I just keep my toes out of the water.
Well, the next option is just become friends with people that already have that stuff, and then you just go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to make the drive.
Yep.
But so then,
But you gotta be careful though, because those same friends are gonna have all this better stuff than you. Then you think you got to have that stuff too. That's what happened to me.
yeah. Yeah, maybe in a later day in life. But as far as some other stuff that you do, so go ahead and tell them. I mean, you covered your upcoming fishing, your upcoming hunting trips and stuff, but what are some other hobbies that you have that you put time into right now, now that deer season's over?
Well, the huge thing that I do is working with Veterans Creed Outdoors, doing the nonprofit work. We had a trapping seminar a few weeks ago. We have an upcoming seminar on tree stand safety and saddles. I'm hoping to get you to come down for that and share your knowledge. So that takes up a lot of my time through the summer months. So that's basically another second full-time job. But it's a passion of mine, so I really enjoy doing that. One thing that I'm really starting to get into is some of these destination hunts that you can do in off season. Like I said, we're going out to Texas to hunt hogs, and it's widely available. I mean, you don't have to go to Texas. You can go to Oklahoma, or there's even some high fence ranches in Kansas, even where you can go out and shoot some exotics. And really, I've kind of been checking a lot of the prices lately, and it's not as much as what a person would think it is. There's some pretty affordable outfits out there, and it can really extend your hunting season. Like, somebody like you that doesn't really get into the turkeys or the fishing, that stuff year round. So if you really got the itch, you can get out there. And the hog hunting, especially, a lot of those places, it's $200 to $500 depending on what the package is, for a day to go hunt, and it's just an absolute blast. I've been to a couple different hunts down in Oklahoma and just had a really good time. And it's something you can get the family involved into. You can go down, make a family weekend or trip or vacation out of it. Especially like down where we're going, we're close to the ocean, and or the Gulf, I guess. So you could spend a whole week down there and just have a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Like hobbies for me, like you said, I'm not like anti-turkey hunting. I like, honestly, guys, I just know myself, and I don't want to get into too much stuff, spread myself too thin on hobbies, because I don't know how to do any hobbies halfway. It's full in, like it full in, and so I think the most respectful thing for me to do for deer and my family is to stick to deer hunting and bow hunting. And I love it enough that it works for me. My main thing would be, as soon as the deer season's over, I just dive into messing with my bow, and I've been doing a ton of stuff already. Talked about before, I've recognized obvious flaws in my bow shooting with commanding the thumb release, etc. That, I mean, I could do it well enough that I could kill deer, obviously, and feel good about my shooting. But I know that there's, I'm on like a level 5 out of 10 compared to what it could be. And so spent some time thinking about what I wanted to do to try to fix that, and bought a back tension release. So I've been just sold out on learning the back tension, and actually messaging back and forth with Josh at Bow Only Outdoors here in Nebraska. And I've mentioned him before. He's a great teacher and has a lot of great YouTube videos teaching archery, and having him break down some of my form videos. And it's crazy stuff I would have never thought before. So last year I was shooting a 30-inch draw mod and felt comfortable, but he's actually got me moving down to a 28.5-inch mod. And the reason is, when I've gone to this back tension, I've tried to share some videos on our Facebook page before, that as you really work on push and pull all the way through the shot until it breaks, and then good follow through on the form at the end, it became pretty obvious that my draw length was too long. And as I was pushing hard, I was hyperextending my elbow and hurting my shoulder a lot, actually drawing back. And so I just got the mods in today, and I haven't got to put them on yet, but we'll see what that looks like. He's like, you need to drop all the way down to 28.5 and try that. So we'll see how it fits. Matthew's bows run a little longer on their draw anyway, but we'll see how that works. And it's stuff that you could get away with the way I was shooting, because I was just drawing back, basically statically holding the bow in place and statically holding the release in place, and just clipping it off, and there was no extension and follow through into it causing any joint issues. But once you start doing the back tension, like Josh said, back tension really exposes any flaws that you have big time. Like, you can't get away with target panic. You can't hover below and just pop it off and jerk to get it up in there. Kind of a problem that I had, and I know Jake has too. And he's looking at shooting a different kind of release to try to break that. But you just can't get away with it. Like, where your pin is when that bow breaks is where it's going. And there's a couple times on the back tension where I'm pulling, and there's been maybe a few times where I jerk to make it go off, and holy moly, that arrow just goes flying. That's why I'm shooting at 4 yards right now in my basement, because it's like an 8-inch move just from that little jerk, trying to force it to go off. But it's been really good for me, and I love doing that stuff. I don't mind shooting 4 yards 6 weeks in a row every night, because I want, like I said, man, I'm addictive. I have addictive personality, and I want John Dudley's perfect follow through, break, beautiful shot to where it's second nature. And so that's what I'm working on. And just other tinkering with the bows. Like I showed Ben last night that my Hamsky limb driven rest, if anybody has those, they've got kind of a metal clip that holds the limb driven line in place, and it looked like that was kind of rubbing, like it might wear out. So I did some searching for other mods on it, and found a couple guys on YouTube that talked about using pressing knots and getting rid of the metal pieces, etc. So replace that whole limb driven line system and use some pressing knots with D-loop string material, and looks even cooler. So it is something sharp. I'm not worried about it breaking. I'm not worried about, if something crazy were to happen and you're out on a trip, you can easily just grab some more string and retie a new one. You don't have to worry about, did you lose that metal clip and the little rubber O-ring that held it in place and all this stuff. But those are the things I nerd out about that help me pass the time. What about deer work specifically? We don't have to go too in depth because we've talked about it a little bit, but what is your progression from now till deer season?
I leave cameras out all year on my home property here just because it's easily accessible. I really watch my doe herd, my doe numbers, and see how they got through the winter, and they're going to be throwing fawns here soon. So I like to keep an eye on that, and I really keep tabs on my predators population, um, specifically the coyotes, because they're so hard on the deer around here. But then it's just, like I said, I've been working on this place for about 5 years now on improving the habitat. And so it's just small changes, a little bit at a time. I kind of dove headfirst into this project Sunday, going full tilt on it. But it was that was one that I'd put off, and it was getting out of hand. So I'm playing catch up on that spot. But it's just little things. I'm going to be using fire a lot more this year. We've had some overgrowth of some invasives that really need brought back under control, so we can get the natural stuff taken off. So yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to, is just making some small changes on the property I have available with me. Another thing that we got coming up is a friend of mine possibly has a property that his family owns, and he's looking to do something similar on that. So I'll be working with him through this year, hopefully. This is going to be one where we're starting at the ground floor. It's something that's just been strictly farmed for years, and it's got some serious potential. And I think the family's realizing that they could do some small changes to help out the wildlife, but still be able to farm it, still have an income off the property to where the property's profitable, and just improve the overall ecosystem of this property. And I encourage everybody to watch that Back 40 series. It kind of, everything they do is on a bigger scale, but you can take that down to literally your yard in town, and you can make those same changes pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, it'd even be beneficial for hunting public land, when they're showing you what kind of habitat they're trying to create and how they read the habitat features. It can really help you on public land to read the features of, oh yeah, I saw setups like this, as far as the hard timber transitions into brush and stuff like that. Just different habitat features that they're creating that you can find in nature on public land, and focus on those areas. Let's see, for archery work, I was going to cover that one. I kind of already did, obviously. The one thing I would mention is it's a good time of year to get into leagues or shoot 3D, etc. You guys saw I did some indoor 3D to get the shooting out of my system, because I knew I was getting ready to make some major bow changes, and I wasn't going to be shooting target for a long time. So I got in a couple 3D tournaments or whatever, indoor, and then came home and took the bow sight off and changed the strings, and now we're back to square one essentially. And so I'm obviously not shooting any targets for quite a while. So that's something you can be doing. I'm hoping to be tuned up for summertime and maybe trying to get into a 3D league or something. And I had on here MAO work. I'll just touch on that quickly. This is the time of year, obviously you see I'm still trying to catch up on deer hunting content, and trying to just get our feet back on the ground with plans going forward. And mid-season you can't really make a shift in what you're doing. You just keep riding it out, and then you try to reflect on how can we do this better. So we work closely with Deer Supply Company, and they have a show called Kindred Life, if anybody wants to check it out. So brainstorm with them quite a bit and do some learning on our end, and trying to come up with different ideas while still producing some content, etc., and getting more into those other niche contents that we have, like the cooking channels and gear reviews and DIY mods and that kind of stuff, outside of the hunting videos. So doing more of that right now. And the last thing I wanted to hit on here, we got about 5 to 10 minutes, is home life. and Ben started to talk about it earlier. This is a big time of year for me to, like, contrary to popular belief, I do like to be home. And I do like to be around my wife and kids and stuff. And so this is the time of the year where you're really investing into that. And it's not like earning brownie points now to cash it out later. Like that's like Megan accepts that I'm going to be gone hunting a lot during the weekends in the fall, and it kind of sucks for her with 3 kids at home, but she's okay with it. And this time of, it is hard, honestly. Like, it sucks not seeing your kids on the weekends. You don't see them during the week because you work weird hours or whatever, and you just don't see them, period. And it does suck. And this is the time of year you kind of get to be around them more, do stuff with them, get them out doing what you're doing, do more dishes and laundry and things that you aren't as involved in a lot of time. And I'm a real big fan of Elk Shape. If you guys don't follow them on YouTube or anything, and Dan Staten, whatever, however you pronounce his last name, he does a podcast called Elk Shape, and they actually put on camps all year round called like Elk Shape Camp. And the cool part is, like, people go to these camps, and I haven't been there, but people go to these camps thinking they're going to get all the information on how to hunt elk and shoot their bow, right? And they get a lot of that. But this dude is a rock, man. Like, he's a Christian. He's got strong faith. He is a big proponent of financial wisdom. He's a big proponent of investing in your family, even though he's gone all the time hunting out of state for, dude, this last year he was like a 45-day trip during elk season of like bouncing between 3 states. It was crazy. But so he's doing that stuff, and then he's doing elk shaped camps during the off season, and he's gone all the time. But he's a big proponent of investing in his family when he's around. And like at these camps, they bring like financial advisors, and they bring all these people because they want to take the opportunity to invest into these guys that want to learn about elk hunting, and talk to them about keeping the whole rest of their life in balance. That, financial wisdom of making sure you're financially in a good spot to go on this elk hunt, and here's how to get yourself in that good spot to where you're paying cash and you're not having to worry about the impact it's going to have on the next 2 years of your family's financial future and stuff like that. It's so cool, and they talk about it a lot. If you guys are into that stuff, check out his podcast. That's where he covers it more than they do on their YouTube channel. But that is something I wanted to close with. Like, it's a good time of year to get that stuff in line. If maybe you're neglecting your job a little bit, it's a good time to get back into that stuff. Ben's doing a lot more VCO stuff right now, kind of thing, because it's really tearing in the fall to try to keep up with all of it. In your family time, if that's a value for you. I'm not trying to tell people what they should value, but if that's a value for you, recognize it and do something about it. Get your house in line so that when you're hunting this fall, you're not, you're open communication with your significant other, so that there's no questioning. Like, when I'm in the tree, I'm not worried about, is she mad that I'm gone? Like, we've had communication all throughout the year that this is what's going to happen, and there's approval for it. So I'm out there not worrying about it. Yeah. What's your spank on that?
I 100% agree. And, it's something that I need to work harder on myself. And, I appreciate you bringing that up because, we get, you and I both get so into the hunt, it's, like you said, it's 4 months long. And it just really, it consumes your dreams, your thoughts. You're driving down the road, and every day I'm driving somewhere, I'm looking for deer. It's nonstop. I can't help it. And, once season starts, that just consumes everything about it. And it is an addiction. I think it's a healthy addiction, but like you said, you got to find that balance with the home life and keep things solid there too, which is something I need to work on. So
Well, we
Thanks for
both do.
bringing it up.
Says the guy who's spending all of his time at his kids' events, and we just spent all Saturday at a powerlifting competition. Yeah.
Oh man, I tell you what, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a proud moment. My boy Wyatt, I'll touch on it real quick.
Yeah.
My boy Wyatt, we just dropped a video on him. He finally shot a deer after 18 years, and he's going to be playing some football for Dakota Wesleyan this fall. And he had the state powerlifting competition in Nebraska on Saturday, and I'd never been to one. Holy crap, man, that was all day thing. And he did really well. He ended up second place in his weight class and exceeded his goals and pushed harder to to not only achieve his goal but smash his goals. Did very, very well. He was very proud of his performance. Of course, I was overly proud of him as well. This pretty awesome kid.
Yeah, he is like, I mean, I've met him just a few times, but he's very what's a good word, like docile. Like he's very just chill, super calm,
gentle giant.
Yeah, he's super. That's a perfect gentle giant. The way he interacted like with Carly at the expo and takes care of his siblings, and oh man, I thought yeah, the video, okay, you guys should go over to Ben's page and check out the videos of his kid lifting because it's insane. I mean, squatting 550 like it's nothing, benching 325 like it's nothing, deadlifting 500 or something. For an 18-year-old. That, I mean, last summer wasn't that, or during COVID is kind of when the NC Kilt Man started.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's lifting like logs and concrete blocks out in the yard and stuff. And he's a big boy, but he didn't come across like a beast. Fast forward 12 months and he's a freaking beast.
His dedication in the gym and just in general, just it was inspiring for me, and it was a big push for my goals and what I'm trying to achieve, get back in shape. And I tell you, he's humble, super humble.
So if you do watch the videos, I mean, that squat video, from what I know of Wyatt and how you talk with Wyatt, that's a perfect example. I mean, he squats 550. It looks fine. And you can see the official tell him no lift or whatever, And he's just like, what? Okay. Like, walks away. And you would think like, oh man, you would just think like some giant power lifter. If it was me, I would have,
oh yeah.
Like, threw a shit fit and like just gotten so pissed off and like everything else, because I don't know, how much did he end up losing by, or not winning by, I should say?
65 pounds.
Yeah, so there's 50 right there, and who knows, if he makes that lift, he might make 575 on the next lift if he's got that momentum. But man, it was just a perfect lift. And if you watch that video, the guy no lift, and Wyatt's just like, all right, your call, boss.
Yeah, he come over afterwards. I was like, what happened? Because I didn't know. I mean, it looked great to me. And I said, what was the deal? He goes, well, he said I didn't get low enough. Can't argue the judge.
Yeah.
He goes, if I didn't want him to call it, I should have got lower.
Yeah.
That's the right attitude, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how much lower you can go. Blow your knees out.
His biggest disappointment was he lifted 550 so easily, and he should have just relifted 550 again. Yeah. But he's like, Dad, I handled that. So he goes, I'm gonna go 575, which he's never lifted that. And he's like, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm like, all right, you think you can? I think I can. And he about did. He
probably went too low.
He did,
to where you can't get out of it.
That was what got him, was in his mind. Like, if he'd have lifted 550, I think he'd have turned around and lifted 575, because he's got it in his head he's got to get lower, so he went too low and just couldn't get back up out of it. But it is what it is. He was pleased with his performance, and that was his first competition ever. Yeah. I mean, he did a strongman competition just for fun last summer, I think it was. But that was totally different than powerlifting.
Yeah.
You know.
It's cool, but
Yeah.
anyway, I think we all can do better. We can always all do better on family time and financial management and any of those things. Being a better archer, being a better deer hunter. I think the whole point of that was just for us all to recognize it. Like, think of how much you put into bow hunting and deer hunting, and are you putting anywhere close to that into other aspects of your life? Or if it's like I talked about, it doesn't mean you can't. Like, there are plenty of really good husbands and wives and moms and dads and kids out there, whatever, that are sold out to hunting, and at that point in the year maybe they're sacrificing a little bit of home life to pursue this. But once that's over, like, that's kind of the deal that's made here, is there's a little bit of sacrifice that goes on there during deer season. But once that's over, I mean, I dang sure better not pick up turkey hunting to the extreme, or like any of that stuff, because there's just no way. And I don't want to either. Like, I need to recognize that I want to be home. I want to be around the family and the kids and stuff like that. I don't want to miss it all. There's plenty of years after they're gone.
Well, and one thing you can do that helps too is to include your family in it. If it's something you're so passionate about, share the love with it and try to instill that drive and passion into your family members as well, because it'll carry over into other aspects of their life. Such as Wyatt's powerlifting is a prime example. He found something that he's passionate about and just dove head on into it, and the proof is in the performance, what it can do. And, like my daughter, Carly, she's 7 years old, and I think she's more deer crazy than I am. It's crazy. Get the family involved, and, you might be surprised at the outcome.
Yeah. The passion thing is a really good point. Megan and I talk about it a lot during deer season, obviously, because there's ups and downs, right? There's times where she's handling having the kids at home really well and I'm gone and it's fine, and there's other times where it's really taxing, just depending on what's been going on. And there's times where I'm coming home from deer hunting really full of life, and there's times I'm coming home just wondering if I ever want to do it anymore, or whatever. And like, she's often consoling me in those times and stuff, even though she's the one paying the price of me being gone. But we talk a lot about, like, there's a lot of people, and I don't want to say, make your own life choices, obviously. Make them in unison with your partner, but there's people that walk away from it when their kids are young, and they just completely walk away from it, and they focus on their kids, and then they try to get back into it later in life. Like, that's their decision. And that's what we talk about here. And it's like, well, no, Megan and I are both in the agreement that it's important for your kids to see you be passionate about stuff. And even if what I'm passionate about is taking me away from them occasionally, like, it's important for them to see that I'm passionate about this, and I'm not just sitting at home. I feel like I'd almost be resenting them that they're taking away from my ability to go do this for a decade or whatever, like, instead we work it out and they get to see, my excitement when I bring the deer home, and they like to see the deer. And as they get older, they'll remember what's going on and remember those experiences and stuff, and remember how passionate, Dad was about doing this, whether they want to do it or not. Hopefully it translates to them finding something that they're passionate about and committing themselves fully to it, but not sacrificing everything else along the way. That's the other extreme that you see sometimes. Is I've kind of joked with Megan before that I'm lucky I was married before I started hunting, because I don't know if I'd ever taken the time to meet anybody. Like, I'd have just been full on, man, like nothing else to even think about. But you see some of that sometimes, that it's sad to see, where people get so into their hobbies that they throw everything else away in pursuit of the hobby. And it's important to reflect and make sure you guys are checking on that you're not going down that path. makes the hobby even more enjoyable too. There's no guilt in it that way. But this kind of took a detour at the end, and maybe that could be a whole different topic for another time. But if you want to get more into it, check out Elk Shape and some of their podcasts with Dan. It's good stuff. Yeah, any parting shots or thoughts?
No, just getting ready for turkey season, man. Go hunt some hogs and run all over. Oh, jeez.
I'm going to find somebody else that's doing all the work and just jump in the blind with them. No.
You might get addicted, man.
Yeah, I might just stay away.
Tell you have that turkey gobble in your face and you can feel it in your chest. It's
that ground turkey hunting stuff is what gets me very tempted. Not the blind stuff, calling them in. It's the hunting public style.
I have never. My goal this year is I want to shoot a turkey with my bow without a blind. I've never shot a turkey with my bow outside of a blind.
Yeah,
and
that'd be hard.
That's my goal this year. I'm gonna try.
Turn your bow down to 40 pounds and just walk around with it at full draw.
Man, turkeys frustrate me to no end. I had a video last year. I went on a rant and tirade, man. I was so pissed.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun though. When everything works right, it's so awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, next week, in Nebraska, it is Nebraska Outdoor Women's Month right now. And Amber is on right now, or she's been on throughout the night. And we're actually going to bring Amber on from here in Nebraska and just kind of talk to her about her experiences getting into hunting as a late bloomer. She's got a little bit of a unique background with the hunting, and just, do our part to make sure that we're showing diversity in the group, as far as hunting opportunities, just cool stuff like that. I was sharing, like, Megan got to meet Melissa Bachman at the Nebraska Deer and Game Expo, and she won't remember it, but I will. It was really cool. But it's cool to, we were planning on bringing Amber on before I even knew it was Nebraska Outdoor Women's Month, and it just works out perfectly. And that's why another reason we're hoping to get Kristen on this month. And so look for that next week. We're going to get Amber on. We're going to talk about her experiences as a late bloomer, a little bit of unique background in hunting, bow hunter, in prime time mule country in Nebraska. And it'd be cool. Instead of a bunch of guys talking about whitetails, we'll get to hear Amber talk about her mule deer experiences, etc. So anyway, thanks y'all for listening, and we'll see you next week.